А тут би можна було так повісти попросту.
Perhaps let me say this regarding the question of private people, the private sector. He'll speak about the private sector, I'll speak about the government.
Я би почав з другого вопросу.
Let me start from the second question.
За останні 20 років,
During the last 20 years?
20
No,
років,
more than 20 years.
Русинські організації систематично контактують із владою.
Russian organizations in Ukraine systematically are in contact. No, systematically contact the government. Are in contact would imply that they are working together.
Ми декларуємо життєутворення про ті організації, про владу, і ми хочемо рішати свої русинські проблеми.
We let them know that we have created organizations and we want to resolve problems that face our community.
Але останні 20 років ситуація в Україні була така, що Україна не визнає національність Русі.
But during the last 20 years, as we know, Ukraine has not recognized Carpathian
Український
Russians.
політик не хоче ніч мати з русинською громадою,
And as a result of that, a Ukrainian politician doesn't want to have anything to do with Carpatho-Russians.
Яка в тій державі через пресу достала деякий атрибут, епітет сепаратист.
With a community that in the Ukrainian media is described as separatist.
За те, що такий чиновник державний теж достане статус сепаратиста.
And so, because if anyone from who has any kind of positive inclination or contact with Carpatho-Russians, then he or she himself will be designated as a separatist.
Як образчик,
And as an example of that,
делегація йде до омбудсмена України.
the delegation goes to the ombudsman of Ukraine. Ombudsman, everyone knows what an ombudsman is. Yes, fine, good. So Ukraine, being a democratic country, has an ombudsman, a national ombudsman.
А за тиждень українська преса, не русинська, українська преса, вже публікує великі матеріали, що омбудсмен сепаратист.
So as this example, a Carpatho-Russian delegation goes to meet officially with the ombudsman of Ukraine in Kiev, and we did that twice, by the way. But 1 week after the meeting, the Ukrainian press is filled with articles about how the ombudsman of Ukraine is a separatist.
То значить, що українська влада сама не може або має таку ситуацію, коли вона поставила себе в таку ситуацію, коли вона сама не може з русинами контактувати.
And so the Ukrainian government itself has created a situation in which you can't have contacts with the Carpatho-Russian community.
Зато тут треба міняти Україну, а не русинів.
And so what we got to do is change Ukraine.
Як другий образчик такий.
Another example.
Ви знаєте, що в 2007 році місний парламент в Ужгороді.
And as you know, because I mentioned in my remarks that in 2007 the Transcarpathian Regional Assembly
декларував, що на Подкарпаттю живуть русини.
that declared publicly by vote that in Transcarpathia they live Carpatho-Russians.
І так як на той час влада на Подкарпатті була пов'язана з одним бізнес-кланом Балога.
And since at that time, хто був пов'язаний?
Балога.
Але хто був пов'язаний?
Ну, обласна влада.
Because during that time, the governmental administration in Transcarpathia was tied very closely to a very wealthy business person, mini oligarch in Transcarpathia called Viktor Baloga.
Нинішній прем'єр-міністр України Яценюк.
The present-day Prime Minister of Ukraine, Arseniy Yatsenyuk,
мав спіч.
had a speech in Parliament.
А я думаю, що тайно, і плюс інтерв'ю.
addressed Parliament as well as in interviews
że na Podkarpаттю сепаратисти
that on Transcarpathia there are separatists,
мають лідера, а то є Балога.
and that the leader of these separatists is this Victor Baloha.
За 13 років, кілько екзистують русинські школи,
13 years Rusin schools exist.
Балога інвестував у русинські школи
And during the 13 years of the existence of Rusin schools, this Victor Baloha, this wealthy businessman, influential political leader, invested in Rusin schools not a cent.
Але в Україні він має репутацію
But in
лідер
Ukraine,
русинського.
but in Ukraine, he has a reputation of being a leader of the Rusin separatists.
Ясне діло, що то ті бізнесмени, котрі стоять ниже,
Certainly, those business people who are at a lower level than someone like a Victor Baloha,
і не бізнес.
not only in business,
Я знаю професора університету в Ужгороді,
I also know a professor at the university in Uzhhorod
котрий каже, що він напише книжку «Історію русинів»,
who said he's going to write a history of Carpatho-Rusins.
коли в Україні, в Києві президент визнає русинів.
He'll only do that when the president of Ukraine recognizes Carpatho-Rusins.
Як я його звідав, а чому ви не напишете тепер книжку?
And so why don't you write it? He asked him, so why don't you write the book now?
Каже, він не дурний робити кар'єру собі, показати кар'єру.
I'm not so stupid enough to ruin my career.
При тому русинські школи екзистують.
Nevertheless, Rusin schools existed or were existing.
Також, коли буде мінятися ситуація в Україні,
And if the situation in Ukraine in general changes,
коли Україна буде офіційно визнавати русинів,
if Ukraine at the national level officially recognizes Carpatho-Rusins,
я думаю, що і проблема з грошима буде рішатися досить легко.
the financial question more than likely will be resolved quite easily. The second half of the question, and I'll try to be a little briefer, has to do with contact with government officials. I alluded to in my talk, and now I'll be a little bit more specific, that we were able to meet with the Minister of Education. Actually, it was Valery and I asked for an audience, and through Ukrainian channels, not through Carpatho-Rusin channels, because some of you know that I'm also, by profession, a historian of Ukraine, and so I have other access to Ukrainian officials. And so I was able to get a meeting with the Minister of Education, who's still the Minister of Education today, and is one of the more respected ministers in the government because one is the few that has done some things at the levels of reform. And most importantly, the subject of the meeting was not to come and say hello. The subject of the meeting, set up in advance, was to talk about two things: elementary Sunday school system in Ukraine and creation of a department of Carpatho-Rusin studies at Uzhhorod Uzhhorod National University. Now, normally, the very request to talk about such things would be no response whatsoever, or a response, sorry, can't meet with you, right? But that wasn't the response. The response was fine. And I also said that it was not just going to be me coming, whom he knows personally, but I'm bringing with me Valery Padyak, head of the school system from Uzhhorod. We had a formal meeting at the ministerial level with him, and we said this is the two things we wanted to do. And his response was, and we brought him all the publications from the school system, etc., and his response was, fine, do you have a plan? Project. I said, no, we don't have one. He says, fine. Go send me two things. One, send me a project specifically what you want to do. And two, did you meet yet with the rector, the president of Uzhhorod State University? He said, no. He said, meet with the president of Uzhhorod State University. So that is literally what we're doing right now. And again, just to give you an idea of the nuances and the way that can help in this regard, first of all, Valery tried to set up a meeting with the rector of the university And for various reasons that didn't took place. And this first meeting with the Minister of Education was in October. Then I bumped into him again in November in another context, and he comes up to me and says, "Oh, did you finish and send that plan to me yet?" Now this is very good. But for various reasons, we couldn't even get an audience with the rector of the university. So now what we're doing is the following. I wrote to the rector of the university myself from here as chair of Ukrainian studies that I want to have a meeting with him. We met with the chairman of the history faculty because the Department of Russian Language and Literature, Russian Language and Culture should be in the history faculty, not in language and literature. If you want to ask me later, I'll tell you why. And he's all behind this, and he's already prepared his version of a curriculum program for the department. And when I was in Washington Kiev, the other Washington, and met with the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, a meeting set up by John and Kaminsky, Jim Kaminsky, to talk about Carpatho-Russian issues, and he strongly wants to visit Transcarpathia. So we agreed that we will make some suggestions to him whom he should meet in Transcarpathia. And among the people whom he should meet is that he should request, because when you go on an official somewhere, that they'll pick whom they're going to see, and he doesn't interact with Russians ever. So whom he should be meeting with, and what we will say, is Valery Padyak, the chairman of the historical department or faculty at the university, and request to meet with the rector. And the rector will come to that meeting. You see, so this is this is where we're at the moment in terms of dealing with governmental officials. Again, in answer to your question, I have raised the issue with other governmental officials that I meet in other contexts, representatives of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Culture, and whenever this comes up, it's sort of, Russians are separatists. It's still kind of fixed in their minds, Russian separatist. But at least with the Minister of Culture, that is breaking down, and we do have people in Transcarpathia who are willing to do this. As you can well imagine, all of these processes are long, drawn out, and the most important thing is, and Americans learned this very young, you try to knock on the door, no. Knock on the door a second time, no. Knock on the door a third time, no. Fourth time, fifth time. We got our foot in the door last October. Now we got to push the door a little more farther open. Long processes, but you have to have, as the Germans say, Sitzfleisch, and you have to be determined and just keep continuing and continuing and continuing. Otherwise, you don't get anything.